Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
To the ultimate session of the PODE and the DAE2 workshop. And in this session, France is going to talk about optimal design software. We're also going to have an opportunity to discuss the location of PODE 2012. I'm voting for Tahiti personally. It's open, and we'll also have an opportunity to just have a general discussion about optimal design stuff, depending how time goes and when we get booted out, I suppose. Anyway, France.
Okay. Thank you for giving me again the opportunity to speak. And I'm not speaking. I'm just the voice of all this group of people, and I tried to put all the names here. And when we were speaking about optimal design in POP, PK, PD, we were talking about non-linear mixed effects models, not GLM, but so presently I think, as you know, we have several software around, and we decided at POD 2006, it was already, yes, that we will need a little tables to compare all the software so that people outside will know what's happening, and then that we will start a comparison of the results. So I'm going to summarize those, except I've, of course, updated since 2007, because now we're in 2011. That's why I had to do my slide today, because I didn't get the information back until very late yesterday evening. But it's okay. I hope it's true. I have to say that most of the people here, so presently there are, let's say, 5 different software, because both here, as one is with an interface and one with the other one. So it's by alphabetical order. So there is one software developed by my group in Paris. It's in R. There is PKSTUN developed by Sergei Leonov and others from the US. We don't know exactly where now. PopDes K is here from University of Manchester. PopEd, we had Andy Hooker and Sebastian Joachim and Sebastian were here, but they had to leave because they have a plane, so they're not here, so we can say a lot of bad things about their software. And we have POP developed by Steve Dufour from University. So you see we have like 5 different software. All of them, they're free. You can download them on website, except PKSTUN for the moment, because it used to be GSK software, but perhaps it's going to change. And the point I want to make here is that they more or less all do the same thing. So I am not going to advertise for one software or the other software. It's just to let you know, well, if you want to do that, there are now 5 different software. I'm sure there is one that you will like, okay? They all are free. Most of them are in MATLAB, except PFIM, which is in R. They all are more or less graphic user interface. They all have library of PK and PD models, so you don't have to write your own model. You just pick in a list, or they can handle user-defined models. They all handle what we call multi-response models, where you want to optimize for different responses. So, you know, they're quite advanced, and there is much more yes now than there were in 2007. So we're all updating your software so that each time there is a no somewhere, we try to update it so that it will be a yes, so that, okay.
Need to add another row. So then you add another row in your table.
Yes, that's why now I have 4 tables.
Okay.
Yes. So I have other tables now. First, when you take the derivative of your model with respect to the time, it should be whether you take analytical derivative or numerical derivative, and this will depend on the software. In R, there is an analytical derivative, something which is easy to use. In MATLAB, it seems it depends. I think in PopDes it is. Then this thing here, it's only in PopEd, and I forgot what it is about. It's
automatic differentiation.
Yes, automatic differentiation, which is a trick which is in MATLAB, which is implemented only in this software, not in the other one, but we can discuss. Whether we can handle model defined by differential equation, it's yes for all the software. Whether we can have this non-block, you know, all these Fisher approximation metrics, whether we have the block A, the block B, and the block C, or not the block C, and all of the software can handle both except this one, but we don't know whether it's very nice to have a non-block or a non-reduced matrix. Whether the random effect covariance matrix could be full, meaning covariance between the random effects. So this still depends on the different software, but we know the calculation, it's not implemented everywhere. Whether you can have a full covariance matrix for the error model, which means the autocorrelation between errors, for instance, or correlation between several response models. Again, it's not available in all the software. Whether design can differ across responses, it's available everywhere. Whether you can have discrete and or continuous covariance in your model, it's yes, almost everywhere. But can you compute the power for the test for that covariance? That will depend on the software. It's available here and here. But it's more because we didn't do the programming effort. I think we can all do the same approximation. Optimization is perhaps where it starts differing more. Whether you can optimize for exact design or continuous design. And here we have some differences here. Operating constraints, we all do. Design structure, we all do. ED or EID or E-log D and so on. I think it's only these two softwares here. Sampling windows, not the new way Steve said, but others have approach for sampling windows, all 4 softwares. So you see, I think there is more yes than no, and we try to, follow each other. The kind of optimization algorithm, well, most software will have the Federer-Wheel algorithm. We have a simplex for, exact design, exchange algorithms, stochastic gradient, simulated annealing, and parallel computing only for Puppet. So the purpose of this slide is not for you, of course, to remember. It's also to put on the website so that people who would like to use one of these could go back and say, well, I'm going to use this one or this one, I like this one, and so on. And what I want to say is that after the PODI 2007 meeting, where I produced the first table, now we have the 4th table, as Barbara already said, we said that, well, we should have a distribution lead pop design where all the authors of all of this software we have registered here. So if you use any of this software, or if you have any question about these pop PK/PD models, you can send a question here, and one of us will answer. And often it's Steve, because Steve lives in New Zealand, so it's a night when it's a day and so on. So if you ask a question in the evening, Steve will be the first to answer because we're all asleep, and next morning you have the solution, okay? And so I think, yes, we really try to encourage all members to use one of these software, but not to use this one against this one. It's really try to use this approach. As I say, all software have ongoing development, so I have to update my table every year, and then more and more yes, and more rows, and more, perhaps one day more and more columns with new softwares. And after doing that, we decide, well, let's show to the community that indeed we will provide the same answers, because it's important also. So we decided to start by, well, let's see whether we compute the same Fisher information matrix when we will use the same approximation. And then let's compare the approximation. And you've heard all day that indeed we did that with a very simple PK example and then a more complex example. And this is where things began to be quite confusing, because the complex approximation was not good as a simple approximation, and we had different results and so on. So we still stuck here for 4 years. However, what we wanted to do is to show whether we will find the same optimal design, but we're not yet here, but I think we will soon move to that. Something I would like to discuss, but perhaps not now, or perhaps now, is whether it's very useful to have 5 different groups in universities spending time developing 5 software where 75% of the software is the same. We compute the same metrics, we have the same models, we have the same graph. So for me, it's a little bit waste of time and energy, but I'm not sure whether we will do that, and whether it's a nice idea to do that, and how we will do that. So perhaps this is a point that we can have during discussion. Okay, so that was the summary of all the software, and now I'm going to show you the comparison of the results. And I'm going to go quite quickly, because I have to say that all the authors this morning took part of the slides, so you already know. So it's the same author list. And as I say, we have all these different software, and we wanted to evaluate them. And to evaluate them, what Fisher information matrix they will predict. Because indeed, they use the same more or less approximation, but they were coded by different people in different language, different numerical differentiation, and so on. So we wanted to see that whether the numerical results will be stable. So the objective was to compare what will be the predicted standard errors and the criterion, which is the determinant to the power of 1 over p, for two examples, a very simple PK example, a one compartment model, and so on, and a more complex PK-PD models with repeated dose, ODE. So in both cases, we used the same methodology. The design was given. It was one group of patients, all the same design. We wanted to predict the standard error for each parameters, all the fixed effects, all the variance components by each software using different approximations. We wanted to evaluate the criterion. And we compare that to empirical standard errors that we obtain by large clinical trial simulations. So the things which more or less give exact answers, either using monoliths with the SIM algorithm, either using non-mem or both. For the simple example, we use 1,000 replication of the CTS, both in monoliths and non-mem. And for the complex example, we use only 500 of them and only in monoliths. As we already discussed, we first all evaluated the first order approximation using this reduced matrix. This is the first thing that we do. We hope that we all get the same answer here. And then we wanted to evaluate this more full matrix using first order approximation, where here you have a C term, a non-block here, and here A star is A here plus this term. And I have to say that before doing that, I think in some software this was implemented, in some software this was implemented, but now all software implement both, I think.
We didn't know which was which.
But we will, yes, so those who implemented that say this is a good approach, and those here say this is a good approach. And then as you heard, there are other approximations, FO interaction, FOCE, FOCE around the mode, and so on. So we wanted to compare that. So in all the results, as I was going to show, yellow will be the empirical results, clinical trial simulation, so more or less the truth. Red will be first order approximation using the reduced matrix, full first order approximation using blue, and green would be more fancy approximation, it depends. So the first example, it's PK of warfarin, a very simple one compartment model, proportional error model. These are the parameters, exponential random effects. And as already discussed by Joachim, it's quite small random effects for clearance and volume, and very large 60% interpatient variability for the absorption rate constant. So first results was the predicted relative standard error on Ka. These are the results obtained by non-mem and monoliths, so around 14%. These are the results obtained by the different software using the reduced matrix, very close to 14%. And when you try to do something more fancy, which is the full matrix, back to 4%, and other approximation, not the new one, other approximation, bad. And I have to say that was in, I think it was in St. Petersburg that I showed this slide the first time.
Yes.
We were all quite, okay. Well, we were happy to get exactly the same answer under the same approximation, which is a good point, but we were surprised by getting so bad results here, and you've heard about this morning. I'm not going to insist. And this is I think, because this parameter has lots of interpatient variability. For another parameter like clearance, again, all the software with the same approximation will give the same answer. It's a good information for you. You can use any of them, you get the same answer. The more crude approximation seems also to be the best one compared to the simulated results.
Why are the simulations different?
Oh, the simulation, okay, I should have taken this one out. This is non-mem first order. So it's a bad estimation method. You should use non-mem FOCE. But it's to show, that is a very good question, is to show that if you do first order for estimation, you don't have the same result than more exact method like monoliths or FOCE. But we're using first order for design. However, our results are closer to the good estimation method than to the bad estimation method. I know.
What does that? I mean, what does that mean? Yes. Okay.
No, it means that because when we talk to people in this pharmacometric world, they all know that to do estimation with first order approximation is bad because you have a linear, more or less linear random effect model. And they all know that you have to use FOC or SIM or more advanced method. So when we came with our software saying we're using F4 approximation, they all say, you're using F4 approximation, we know F4 approximation is bad. And I am advocating, and we are advocating, that F4 approximation for design step, it's okay. And you would predict the results that you would get, not with an F4 estimation method, but with an exact estimation method. Because design is about derivatives of models. I would like to prove that mathematically. Yes. So, Valerie? He's left. I wanted him to prove that. Now that is not working in GSK. I'm sure you can prove that mathematically. Okay. So that's why here we have F4. Later on we won't have it. And these are for the variance, and for the variances, it's the same C matrix, and I think the things are much closer. You know, whatever the approximation, we more or less get the same answers. And about the criteria, here is also true value that we get from simulation. Again, the amount of information predicted by this more complex approximation, they will predict more information than what you get. That's why they will predict lower standard errors. So that started a lot of discussion about this approximation, but we were happy to get same results from same model. It was a simple model. So the conclusion of that example was that the reduced Fisher matrix with the first order approximation, all software will get identical standard errors, very close to the simulation. That the clinical trial simulation, SIM and non-MEM will give the same answer, FO different. And when you have different approximation, and the more complex they were, the worse they were, you have different results. Then we went to a more complex model. It's a PK-PD model. It's HEV model, so it's taken from this paper of David Neumann from Science, where indeed we have here a PK model, which is again a one compartment model with two equations, so it's a simple one. But then the PD model is again a viral dynamic model, so it's a model with three guys: the hepatitis cells, non-infected, the virus, and the infections of hepatitis cells. And treatment of HEV, and here it's a bitherapy, block here and here. So I'm not going to give a course about these HCV models, but it's differential equation, quite complex, because here you have the products on V and T, and here we have the PK of the drug blocking the productions of viruses. So the PK here until here, and it's quite a complex ODE model. And what we observe are only the concentration and the viral load. We don't observe the number of infected cells. So it's not like in HEV, we don't have this CD4 measurement. So we assume that we had a dose given every week, additive error on log 10 viral load, and additive error on concentration. Some parameters were fixed, some parameters were estimated, and we assume random effect on log parameters with the same variance for all parameters, and these parameters were taken as real parameters from real publications. This is a typical, for the typical patients, the decrease of viral load, and this is first week, second week, third week, fourth week, and this is the increase in concentration. And we have different design, but we will evaluate only design D3, which is several points here, one here, one here, one here, one here. So we wanted to evaluate that design. Before evaluating all the software, we did this very large clinical trial simulation that we published in Statin Med, where we compare the results of the CTS done by Monolix in yellow, and the prediction by p-field using the reduced FO and so on. And we were very pleased to show that indeed we were always very close for all the log fixed effect, all the variances, and all the sigma. So I think it's doing quite a good job. And it takes 5 days to get the yellow, and it takes 5 minutes to get the gray. You know, so I agree with Doug. Now you can use computer to do everything, but you know, it's just evaluating one design. It's not optimization. Now, what about the results? So I have to say, what about the results? Again, this is the clinical trial simulation. this is a reduced matrix, this is the full matrix, and then it took us at least 6 months to get all, we now all have the same results. But I have to say that for this complex example, it took us 6 months to get the same results. Because the differential equation solver was not the same, the way the model was specified by me was not very clear, so there were different interpretations. The fact that the initial condition for the CV, for the variable load, depends on parameters, so that you have to take them into account in the derivative and so on. So it takes a lot of time, but now I think we're happy because we all have the same results, except one which I had to cross out because we exactly know why it's not giving the same answer. But by the time Steve has finished his talk, perhaps we will have the same answer. So we're happy, but it took some time because of numerical problems and so on. And it seems that the numerical solver in R is much more robust than the numerical solver in MATLAB. No? Yes. So I think, for R it was quite easy, and for MATLAB they had to struggle and so on. So
I didn't experience any problems with numerical solving in MATLAB. It
Okay.
was more about misspecifying certain things. It wasn't the solver.
okay. So this is for one of the parameters. It's one of the pk parameter, which is again pk. And for PD parameter, again, this is C50, which is a very important parameter. Again, the crude approximation gives results closer to the simulation. And all software will give the same answer. And this is for the variances. And this is for the criteria. This is the global information matrix, the simulated one, and the predicted one using this crude approximation by all the software. So, to conclude that part, we find that the ODE solver can have influence on the model prediction and then on the Fisher matrix, so you have to be careful when you use these complex ODE models. It took us quite 6 months, or a year almost. No, okay, 6 months, to understand why we had difference when I first drew that plot, and all the software, all the red were different, but now they're all the same. We find that indeed, even using a first order approximation and a block matrix, we predict quite well all the standard error for all the parameters. I've shown you only 3 parameters, but I have all the graph for all the parameters, but it's quite boring. And as I said before, to do clinical trial simulation, it takes 5 days for one design, and to do design evaluation, it takes 5 minutes. So the general conclusion is, well, as you know, we have all working how to improve the computation of the Fisher matrix for highly nonlinear models, and we have all this idea. But for most PK models, this crude approximation of first order block approximation seems to work quite well, gives meaningful results, avoiding cumbersome computer simulation and allowing design optimization. So the next step of our group, I think, is now to work on design optimization. Given the same parameters, the same model, we have the same Fisher matrix, we will find the best design. But I thank you for your attention. And that's why we are so many authors, because it's really a group work. And I have to say that I'm very happy because it's thanks to Pod, and I would like to thank all the authors, because I think it's nice when there are different software that the software developers like to work together and not compete. It's really because, and this is what we try to do, not to compete between each other, but try to make the field.
So I'd like to clarify one thing. 6 months, it didn't take 6 months to code the models. It took 6 months to find 2 hours to code the models. And that would be probably close to the time. So it doesn't actually take that long to code a model. Like about 6 months for 5 minutes.
No.
But anyway. So
I actually want to say that this communication with all developers tremendously helped us, because there were a few little things which we missed. There were, sometimes glitches in the code. So having this benchmark example when you can really compare and be sure that you are doing the right thing was very, very important. And once again, I want to stress that over the last 2 years, the majority of programming work with our tool was done by Alexander Aliyev, my former colleague, who I think did a really nice job. He's not here, but while we were having a dinner yesterday, he actually corrected the final glitch in the code to make the complete match of the results for this combined PK-PD model.
So discussion's open for.
Yeah, I think that it should be now a general discussion. And
For the three topics. The one is, anybody want to talk about the software or ideas about that? Anybody want to talk about PODE, which we need to talk about for 2012? And then,
and also I want to say
Can we
that
start somewhere else?
I have a site from Wanky who is developing a website for generating efficient design. So this is something also we can talk about, this website and whether our, okay.
So France put forward a centralist position that it is wasteful of resources to have all these people doing the same thing. I think what Sergei has just said suggests that competition and collaboration, flexibility has advantages. So perhaps you should not all try to decide on one side. Or I think it's really, yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I think now I agree with you. Yes,
Okay,
perhaps.
good. Breakfast tomorrow.
well, I mean, certainly during development, I mean, this has been critical for this part, but there will become a time, I presume, in the future where really it's just replicating.
Oh, yes.
I mean, once the algorithms have been established, it's about what colour it's going to be and how you click on buttons, and then maybe that's a need to think about. But
The wild things are still growing.
yes, exactly, yes.
I'd like to hear how the different developers have time to do all this coding and programming. Did you get a grant to do that? Is this at your own time you spend over the weekend, evening? Or is this part of the job that you know, instead of writing papers and do this?
It took 6 months to find 2 hours to code this example, so I mean, that's a bit trite, but well, it's a good question. How do people do this?
Everyone can answer.
Yes?
Yeah,
Franz?
I have to say that I didn't program one line at all in this code. So it was and it is, and they are beyond you, the work of the PhD students. You know, they develop a new something, for instance, covariance in the omega or intrapatient variability. And then, because we have this PFIM already, they just change little things in PFIM, they write a paper, and then I said, now we have to make it available for everyone. But I think it's part of our job now as biostatistician, perhaps not pure statistician, but not only to develop methods, but to provide the software to use them. I think that's the way people work now in biostatistics. It's part of our job to do the program and to put them out. So I don't think it's a job of weekend or evening. It's just part of the job of biostatisticians.
So you have funding for the students, and then
Yes.
as part of their
Yes.
dissertation work,
Yes.
they develop programs.
Yes.
What about others?
Well, in my case, I started to develop this tool about 7 or 8 years ago, and it started as a collection of modules for specific projects within the company. So people from PKPD modeling group came to us and asked a question. Here is the model, 2-compartment bolus input. Can you suggest something? So we did this, and then it became clear how I did this. I took, you understand that the design engine is the same for all models. All you have to change is the response function and maybe the measurement error model. What I was doing was copying and pasting and quickly changing the response function. It became clear that it's very inefficient in a sense. And we decided to standardize, and at some point managed to have some financial support to pay to my
The colleague,
which you may understand is substantially way less than if you hire a programmer. We talked about summer student maybe, but summer student come and go, and at least I know this guy for 30 years, so, and I have complete trust. And plus he's a very good programmer, and I think over the last 2 years he really added a lot of things on top of structure. We have now the user-defined option.
So he's a professor.
He has a doctor. He has PhD in computational math, but he is a very good programmer.
Perhaps, yeah.
Well, I mean, for us in Manchester, we supported by a consortium of pharmaceutical companies, and developing this optimal design software was part of our deliverables. So they support us financially, and part of the money has been used to develop this software. I have been maybe responsible for most part of the development, and you know, a way of justifying my assistance in this case. So they pay me, you know, salary, and then I work on the development. Because I'm just, you know, a postdoc there, so that's what I do. It's my job. So technology development and program.
So you're basically paid to develop programs.
Well, part of my
Yeah,
job
part
is
of
to
it,
be part of it.
okay.
I wanted to ask about the relationship between this open source software and these for-profit companies that make a lot of money off of software. One thing I found is that if you, in the old days, we used to put the code, the computer code, in the back of the students' doctoral theses. And then I found that companies could just take that code and, you know, once it's published in the public domain, they can do anything they want with it. Do you have any concerns about about people making profit off of your open source work?
The point is that there's a big difference between open source and public domain.
Yes.
Open source software is covered by a license,
Yes.
and the license states exactly what you can do with it. So incorporating it into a commercial product, the terms of the license are, you can go ahead and do that, but then you have to make the source code for your product available too. So that tends to dissuade.
Yes.
But it does come back also to the
Well, what if you
issue
just
of,
publish a paper in biometrics and say, here's my code?
public domain.
You won't publish it in biometrics.
Yes, you can put it in supplementary
yeah, if
material.
No, but that's
If I
why
can say
we
something.
always, I don't know how you say that in English, but our code is protected. It's, you know,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
French,
It's
so there is
yeah.
it's a GNU license, no, GPL
GPL.
GPL license and so on. So usually, yes, a commercial software could not just take the code and.
yeah, and this gets back to the issue that one of the things that Franz was saying, that if you're going to be working in a computational area, then, and you're talking about how you're going to optimize designs or something like that, part of your research should be providing a reference implementation, and including the enough information that other people can look at this and then work on their own. So, within the art community, and full disclosure, I'm a member of the Art Core development team, so I'm not exactly unbiased on this. There is a system of creating packages. And so right now on the comprehensive R archive network, there's over 3,000 different packages. And Bioconductor has another several hundred to 1,000. And these are all covered by these open source licenses. Before it can go onto CRAN, it has to be a licensed facility. And so they include the code, but they also include examples and sample data sets and the documentation and so on. So it should be an entity that another person can get hold of and start to get into the computational method. MATLAB as a commercial entity, MathWorks will provide some facilities, but they don't provide the same kinds of facilities for distributing code.
Well, in academia, I mean, developing codes, writing is very time-consuming and
Yeah.
need a lot of actually creative work. But there's clearly an underappreciation. I mean, you spend all the time doing that, no publication, well, you're out. How does one resolve that? I mean,
In my case, I retired.
yeah, that's.
But you're right, there really is no incentive for a tenure-track faculty to do something like this in our United States academic system.
Oh, I don't. Do you agree?
Yes, I mean, like you spend
No,
all the
I
time
don't
program. I know.
I don't know, because it's a vicious not the contrary of vicious. You know, if you have a software, then people will use it. Then they will quote your paper. Then and it's not only the number of papers; it's the number of quotation and so on. So
It's
if
pretty
you
much
develop a
paper.
nice method in biometrics and no one can use it, it's lost there.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I think you, at the end, you will win.
Well, paper and biometrics with no software
Yes.
Would do too.
would be just as fine as paper and biometrics with software.
No, but because
As
then
far as tenure is concerned in the U.S. system.
Just one good example, this website that I've developed, I got a grant to do that, and the minute the grant expired, I actually, honestly speaking, just don't have even a second to come back and revisit some of the stuff. I mean, it's such that there's so many things going on, and that's why to emphasize, I think it's a very good idea to have a website where people can generate optimal designs. I mean, we know all the results. There are a lot of theoretical results out there, and even in the stack community, people find it exploratory. They don't know how to generate designs. And now you have something that go there, type in the parameters, and there comes back a design. I thought that's helpful. But there's so much work involved that, you know, it's lonely out there and is not really appreciated. But I think it's a good step in the right direction. And so I'm hoping that Henry Wynn is not here. I could have consulted Federal and make sure nobody does this. But people have planned to do this. Henry said the EU community was trying to do something like this. That was probably 10 years ago. But I encourage, and somehow I would like people, maybe there's some sharing effort involved so that, you know, you compute the optimal design. It's very theoretical. You can't remember those formulas. And now you have something go there and change the design space and everything else. It comes back with the optimal design that you can verify that it's true. So it's very time consuming, and but I think it would promote optimal design ideas for practitioners. Right now, practitioners, they have no idea, and it's too difficult for them to compute. They give them the theorem, right? A lot of Huygens-Dapper, who is not here, he has very nice results for different types of nonlinear models, and some of them have to go through canonical transformation, and you look at the theorem, you don't know where it goes. But now you go to have a website, you type in the numbers you want, and it comes back. So I hope that the design community would have greater interest to, you know, have something, a joint effort to promote design ideas. And once you have this, you can do a lot of sensitivity analysis, you change parameters, and how things look like. So.
Just as a note on this point, with the IMI funding opportunities, given that all the software bar one is developed in Europe or the UK, so essentially Europe, then there is an opportunity, well, actually, in the US, sorry, then there's an opportunity for IMI to get, presumably get funding for doing this.
What is IMI?
It's the, France, you're actually on it, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Initiative, medical initiative, no?
Okay.
Innovative medical initiative. Oh, it's from FP7. It's a part of FP7 that is sponsored mainly by pharma companies, the FPR, and they try to find out which are, so half of the money comes from Europe and half of the money from the drug companies, except, I'm sorry for people in drug company, FP7 or Europe will give money and drug company will give in-kind money, so it's work of their employees. Mm. And then we applied for a general platform which is called DDMO, Drug Disease Modeling Resources, where there is a lot of money for some people to try to connect all this software for estimation, like monoliths to non-MEM, to R, to SAS, and also for design optimization, so that we will have a general XML language to code the models, and then you could go from one software to the other. You don't have to, say, oh, here I have to put hey, this way or this way, and so on. And so it's a grant for 5 years. It's Mats Carlson, who is in Uppsala, the head of the pharmacometrics group, who is head of this consortium. So 15 different university and 10 different companies.
So as Jay first.
But it's nothing about developing new methods. It's just connecting them. Right. So it's really as I said, mostly engineer work and so on. And it's mainly for drug companies, so that they can always, write their models the same way and always use the best software around when changing, because it's always, there is always a new method that come here and then here.
To come back to Wenky's thoughts, some journals are also now encouraging shorter papers about software. For example, bioinformatics is one such journal where there are a whole bunch of papers on whatever methods people write about, but there is also a section of that journal which is a paper that describes softwares. And there is another journal, Mammalian Genetics, I believe, that also encourages people to write papers, very short summary of the methods, and then a little bit about the software and where it is available. So that, I believe, counts as a publication. I have personally not published about software in either of these places.
No, thank you. But I think there are people who really promote that idea. Denis-Diderot, chair of the statistics department. So he started this journal called Journal of Statistical Software, and the ranking has been really going up because he is somebody who really thinks programming and all this is so underutilized, and he thinks it's so valuable that people have good software and then publish on the journal and to get some credit. And so actually I would encourage, I don't know if you do that.
Journal of Statistical Software? It's cool.
Well, no, most of them is an other code, but they take MATLAB and any code, but you can get publications after you write a program and send it there. They with examples, and they get published. And you get additional points for doing that. So.
Oh yes.
I just to complement on the open source. I'm coming from industry, and in industry we are struggling with using this new methodology because we are operating in a regulated environment. So usually in our statisticians, especially moving in the late stage, will be forced to use SAS, not R, not MATLAB, nothing else. So now, from the community of statisticians in pharmaceutical industry, we are trying to push FDA to accept more and more, let's say, packages in R or something in Wimbugs or something in MATLAB or something like that. And I think that perhaps is good that is coming. So people from the industry recognizes the potential use of this type of developments. But I think that we need to sit together and discuss how can we then perhaps join the efforts, industry and academia, and either invite FDA to join or EMA as well, or push them to accept it ultimately. But I think that that's exactly a working group now, which is we are putting together on the Society of Clinical Trials in the US, and I think that's something which we would like to have. And the idea is, can FDA then put the same type of stamp on, let's say, a package which is in R, exactly the same rank like PROC in SAS? And today the environment is that that's not true.
I think we need to open discussion up further because I'm conscious of our time limitation, assuming 5 o'clock is our exit time.
Oh, well, we are not really limited, apart from that people may get tired.
Okay. Well, I mean, we should certainly discuss at some stage where Pode should be for 2012, and then we can have open discussions, including further discussions on software, if you like. So we might just...
Can I just answer to that?
Yes.
I think the software on design are less important than the design for analysis of data, because usually you have no data in design, And I think when you say that I put something times here and here, you don't send to FDA how you did optimize your design. You optimize your design and you send to the FDA the results. So I think it's less touchy for designing, except for adaptive design and stopping rules and so on. But this is not what we are discussing. But you're right, for adaptive trials and stopping
why
and
this design and not that we generate.
Now they require to motivate why you pick this design for your phase 3 study and not traditional design. So that would be now the request for design as well, not only for analysis.
But
can I? Question. Friends, your talk, you have exact design up there.
What?
Exact design?
Exact.
Exact. Okay. I saw the Z.
Do you do that? I mean, how do you know it's exact?
Sorry, should we hold this for later, do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, let's go back to
this is back.
Yeah, Pode, yes. I mean, exact.
Exact design is the next man or
Yes,
woman.
of course, yes. So let's talk about exactly we want Pode to be next year. So, the possibilities that I can think of, just to sort of summarise, is we attach it to a conference, or it floats free. And if it attaches to a conference, it could attach to Page, where it's been before, or to a statistical conference. And there are obviously other options. That's only 3 I can think of. So float free, attached to a conference, and if so, what sort of conference?
That sounds like 2 suddenly.
What's one conditional one? That sort of splits up, but the conditional one, the last one. Just thoughts on this. I mean, and of course, time of year will be affected by that as well.
And please remind when Page
So
will
Page
be next
will,
year and
Page,
where.
Page. Okay, well, it's not a very exciting location. It's in Venice, I think, on one of the islands, with that big long island in Venice.
Could you just write down
Venice,
Page, Venice, and dates?
I don't know the dates, but
Oh, roughly.
So it's going to be in Venice on June 6, 7, and 8. So it could be on June 5 in Venice.
And it's always Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yes.
Page, right?
So it could be a Tuesday.
Thanks, you, Steve.
Hey, what's the date, sir?
The date of Page are 6, 7, and 8 of June. And usually it stops at 8 noon, so we could have Friday afternoon and Saturday morning, which we did in St. Petersburg. It's quite tiring after school. Or we could have it the day before.
And we did the same in Berlin, actually. The same, split into 2 days.
But then perhaps most of the statisticians that are here, you don't come to Page, perhaps don't want to come to Page, and
Go to Venice.
perhaps Page is what Barbara said this morning. It is group which is called Population Approach Groups in Europe. It's mainly pharmacometrics, analysis of PKPD, and so there'll be not a lot of statistics. Well, some we're going here, but mainly it will be clinical pharmacology. But half, even 2/3 of the participants are from industry, I think.
I'd say, yep.
Whereas here we're almost all academia, so it's quite a difference.
Yes.
We cannot speak hours of approximations, efficient metrics. Just look at us as we're crazy.
Do we know?
We are, but
Frans, do we know that there would be a person there who would organize?
I know the person who's going. Now the difference, yes, because it's in Venice, it's not in a university, so they will rent a hall or a hotel and so on. So then I should ask them whether they could find a room for 40 or 50 participants the day before. I don't know who's going to pay for the coffee, and then, so I'm not sure it's so easy. It's feasible.
Or pay for the room.
Or pay for the room and so on, because the other time we were always going either to a room in university or to a room in a drug company, so they will pay for the room.
I think the good idea is that people who are actually interested in the meeting, it's good if they organize the meeting. So there were several of us who already done that, and it would be good to sort of rotate. So one of the suggestions was that it could be in Uppsala. But unfortunately, people from Uppsala just left.
But I asked them, and they're young. They say they cannot make the decision or the commitment themselves. But Mats already said once a long time ago that he would be happy to have it. So perhaps this is something. If it's a floating conference, then yes, Uppsala University could be an option. But we have to be sure about that.
Of course.
Or whether there is any statistical conference next year around May and June that most of you will go, and perhaps we. No?
You need a few days for this conference, right? It's not.
It's historically been 1 day.
It's 1 day.
The POE conference historically
Just like today.
Yes, usually shorter talks and more often.
Shorter talks, about 9 talks perhaps.
If people working in GLMMMs really want to, enlarge the topic and be more of us, which I think is very nice, we can go for 2 days. If
There is, the winner, the Western Northern region of America, the Sister Biometric Society, and the International Statistical Chinese Association. So they are always almost adjacent to each other. So,
but this is in the US.
They're in the
US.
Yeah.
Most of the participants are from Europe.
For Europe.
So,
I don't know. Why not doing it once in the US? Then perhaps will be more people from US, less people from Europe. I don't know.
Next year GSM will be in San Diego, which is a nice place.
But around this time frame is where the ICS will be, and even winner. So if you want to have in between the two, that would be actually.
And this webinar is usually in June. Sometimes.
Yeah, is always
The International Biometrics Conference is in Tokyo in July, I think. So presumably they're not going to have a competitive one in the US, or maybe they are.
WINAR and ENAR always have a meeting. ENAR's in Washington, D.C.
Does anybody know about other meetings where mixed effects models are sort of main topic? No.
That was good. So what about I don't know, is it other systems like MODA or DEMA or one of those?
What is it in 2 years?
MODA is in 2 years' time.
And
we don't know about DEMA next DEMA. This one is now, soon, in a couple of weeks.
And where will be MODA in 2 years?
In Poland.
Poland. So perhaps we could.
Yes, we could
more or less
keep
decide
this
that in 2
option
years we
for.
try to go to MODA.
We could keep this option for 2 years, for 2013.
Yeah.
Yes, for 2013, that could be as an option for both.
I think it's going to be very expensive to run in Venice without a local organizer who has university rooms or facilities available, because this conference runs on a an all rag sort of thing. So
There is a university in Venice?
It probably doesn't do.
Yeah, but you need really you really need that person who will take care, and the person has to be local. That really helps.
Southampton will presumably be happy. Oh, sorry.
Is there something?
How many European people go to ACOP?
To what? Sorry?
ACOP, American Conference on Pharmacometrics.
I see.
It's like PAGE, but in the US.
But there won't be ACOP in 2012 because we have WCOP next year. We have World Conference of Pharmacometrics in Seoul.
Yes.
So there is no ACOP next year.
In September in Korea.
Seoul. Soul. I don't know how to say it. French.
Seoul.
Korea.
Oh, sorry.
I know.
We tend to pronounce more of the final consonants than you.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
I don't know how they pronounce it.
So I guess the question is whether we're on time to a conference like WCOP or PAGE, but I have to say unless you get a academic institution at the
just one day
location.
in university, perhaps.
What do they do in Lindstad, Basha? Do they do mixed models?
In where?
Where?
There may be mixed models, a little a session. Lindstad is a conference which is usually organized in Poland. This next year will be in July, but it is, as it says, Lindstad, linear models mainly, lots of matrix operations. But they now are open to non-linear models as well. Yes. We could ask them. I don't know that the Lindstad community would be that big part of this kind of interest.
So it sounds like possibly Uppsala might be a possibility for next year as in floating free, given that the link with here may not work. Shall we?
I've been to Sweden. I don't know. You've been to Sweden?
I've been to Uppsala.
Perhaps we should just ask them.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mats. See if, I mean, if people want to go to Uppsala, that's easy to get to.
Probably organizationally for them it's not that difficult because there are so many people working
in pharmacometrics.
in
So
this
I think
area.
the largest group of pharmacometricians in the world will be in Uppsala. So.
And there are optimal design people then?
No. Well, yes, so the ones that were here.
Yeah.
Joachim and Sébastien.
Yeah, but isn't there also some somebody else doing mathematics?
More in the mathematics, because it's a school of pharmacology. It's not a school. It's a school of pharmacy.
No, it's Stockholm University.
We're Stockholm. Oh, okay.
Then we were thinking at one point, but they all left. Perhaps Manchester also, with Donev and Kay and Manchester could be, but I don't know. I did not ask them, so.
Manchester.
Because you have optimal design both in the math department and in the pharmacy school, so perhaps a way for them to know each other.
I would suggest that we ask people in Uppsala if they would be willing to organize such a meeting. But first I need to ask you here if you would be willing to go to Uppsala.
And the question to those who hasn't attended Code before, what do you think? Is it useful communication and exchange of ideas? It's just one day of this workshop, but it would be interesting to hear from you. Would you be interested to continue and to be part of this community? Hopefully, yes.
You are invited.
I thought it was quite useful, but I've noticed I've been onto the web pages from past ones, and there's a bit of limited information there. So it was good when it was here because they're recorded. It's obviously not feasible for people from Australia and New Zealand to kind of come to Europe very often.
Talks, presentations are online, but that's it.
I think that only the slides.
Slides, yes.
Yeah, but there's some things that you don't get from slides.
Of course, yeah. Of course.
So I would maybe do, because it's unlikely that I can travel to Europe very much. But I would just request that that in the future that they are recorded.
Oh dear, that makes things a bit complicated. I think to get a good recording, you need to have technical facilities.
Yeah. Or a laptop with a wireless microphone.
Well, I'm not sure that's that easy because the quality of a lot of noise would be recorded as well. So.
Okay. Oh no, not if it's on the person. I'd do this for my lecturing.
I see, maybe.
Can I say, Dave, this is your first pod, is it? I think Dave, is it your first pod? Because I'm thinking about it from Southampton's perspective, which is a large design group.
I think what you had here was a really, possibly almost unique opportunity, right? Because you were able to take Pogue and combine it with a broader meeting in an even broader program, which meant you got a real depth of people, which, to be honest, you're unlikely to attract to a one-day meeting on a more specialised topic. So, I mean, just simply from my perspective, it sounds really good. I'd love to go to something like that, I think. But it's got to compete against all the other things that I'd like to go to too, right? So I think you need to think a bit carefully about whether you want to are you going for your target audience, or do you want to try and keep it broader, but be realistic that you're never going to get it this broad again unless you piggyback onto a broader design meeting.
Yes, that's true. I was thinking about it. Because to have a meeting like this every year, it's unfeasible. It's almost impossible to organize. So one idea might be that we have small meetings every year, because that's easy. There's a group of people interested. And every some years, make an effort to do something bigger like this.
Well, what you've got, of course, is that in a lot of years, you will have either a MODA meeting in Europe or a DEMA meeting in Europe.
Yeah.
And so some years you have the opportunity to say, well, okay, we're going to tie this on the end of that meeting, for example, if the organisers are happy with that. And that gives you an opportunity, perhaps every other year or something, it becomes a bit broader. And in the intermediate years, you have the more focus group on a one-day meeting who are really interested.
Yeah.
Which is very reasonable.
Yes, go to MODA for something.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of many options. Yeah, good.
Meet in Calais.
You can also meet in Calais or under the channel.
Dover. Dover. I don't know.
Because the other option is to go with Steve's idea on Tahiti or somewhere. Make it very attractive as a place to go.
For one day.
For one day.
For 20 people.
We can tack on to a holiday, right?
Yes.
But the other thing also, perhaps it's try to, in more standard statistical meeting, try to increase the amount of talk or session about nonlinear models, about design and so on. So I don't know how we could succeed in that, but I think it would be nice for us as a group, so that this work of all of you be more, recognized in the statistical code. I don't know. So I don't know whether I next GSM? GSM.
San Diego.
And perhaps we can submit I really want to go there.
But it's,
submit something,
Well,
you
they're-
can submit sessions, no?
Yeah, they're requesting, in fact, right now.
Yeah.
They're soliciting session ideas.
What's the deadline, do you remember?
Soon,
So, yeah, October 1.
very soon. Well, Eugene.
But this invited
said that
session,
he was
is
organizing
that what you're
a
looking for?
On
I
estimation?
Well,
I think
there are
it
these
had to
other
do with
things, aren't there?
estimation. Yeah.
Well, to
There
move,
are invited contributed sessions too, aren't there? Or something?
But I have
Yeah,
to
topics-
contributors,
topics.
It's a very wide
topics,
contributed that.
yes.
Yeah.
well, it's, I mean,
So
to,
design in non-dynamics, in generalized dynamics
Yeah,
effect models
sure.
and non.
And this is early August.
The problem with JSL have been only once, I have to say. It's so huge, I think you get lost.
5,000,
and so I'm not
6,000
sure that's
people.
the kind of
Do you
problem.
like San Diego?
San Diego is nice.
The deadline is September 7th.
There was an international biometrics.
For the
Yes.
proposal for the
Smaller.
invited session?
The international, but no, the
IBC in
smaller
Tokyo
than
is
GSL.
huge.
It's huge.
so outcome to, I mean, for next year, perhaps to contact Matt since we were here, have it in Uppsala. There's always an opportunity to have a session and another meeting which can be organised ad hoc by whomever wishes to do that, and then 2013 perhaps investigate the possibility of Poland.
Yes, I think that 2013 to attach it to MODA is a good idea.
To be part of MODA even.
Sorry?
It could also be part of MODA.
Well, could be, but don't know it. No, I don't know.
So there are, I think we're probably, everyone's getting
Yes,
tired now,
yeah.
so is there any general discussion where you've got burning things they want to raise
I
up?
mean, the question just is one can find out if Uppsala is willing to do this.
Yes, yes.
But it isn't clear to me that we're actually going to get there. I mean,
No, well, with the idea, I
so
think,
it has to be very conditional. that's
yes, so the outcome from this is that somebody from the PODE team will contact Mats and find out if Mats is interested in holding it there. And if that's not the case, then we could consider Manchester perhaps, or somebody. In other words, it's going to be by itself as a meeting, perhaps for next year. And then after that, we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
But
Well, we might alternatively consider having it in Dover or Calais or something.
yes.
Or in Paris.
Or Paris is usually nice. I'll explain that later.
Right.
I have another suggestion. I discussed that yesterday evening. That I was thinking that with this whole week, not only today, it was very nice talks and very, And I was thinking about a book.
You want a book?
Cambridge University Press. And so I was wondering whether any of the authors of the talks, and now they've been recorded. Remember, they're recorded. So just what you have to do is type what you've been saying.
But
And so is that because there is no book on design for mixed models and nonlinear mixed models and general GLMM, and I think it's quite up to. And here we have all the scientists working in this area, starting from linear mixed models to GLMM to NMMM and so on. So I don't know whether we want to do that or we don't want, or we don't have time. Or
So who are speakers here? Hands up, please. Are you willing to contribute to a book?
Are you ready to aid it?
Sorry?
Are you ready to aid it?
I would be happy to be one of.
Yes, I'd be happy to be one of also. From different.
My talk is based on a paper that was just published, so that's a problem.
Yeah.
But is it, if it is published, can't you add it as a chapter in the book anymore? Or?
Well, there are copyright issues.
Yes.
Copyright problem. Can you produce another one which is related?
So you see, you do another one.
Can you permute all lines?
Doug, would you be willing to add a section? Sure.
Isaac Newton Institute cannot provide any support for that?
I don't know. I wasn't considering this option, so I probably try to find out what is possible. But before I do this, I would need to know that there is a will for of the people who produce talks to
So-
contribute.
Please raise your hands, those who may contribute.
I like this. No. It usually depends upon how you see how good an editor is in getting information from particular individuals.
Yeah.
So it's a possibility, but
Yes, let's
hard to
keep
tell right
it
now.
as an open possibility for the moment. Because I don't know, I don't have much experience. I would have to get somebody experienced on the team as well.
I actually have a proposal.
Yes.
So Basa and friends investigate all pluses and minuses and make decision on their own. You know, generally attitude is positive, so but there are a number of difficulties, and if the Isaac Newton Institute provided with paper to write down our papers, then we can go ahead. But seriously, it's not that easy.
Yeah, that's right.
It will take your time.
And
Yeah.
publication
We
costs,
have
etc.
to
I mean, this is,
publication.
Does it count?
Doesn't count, yes.
Which are well enough known now, Bill.
But then see, for younger people, who start designing mixed models and so on, they have no books to start with. They have to look at books on mixed models, and books on nonlinear models, and books on design, and
Well, I think the idea of,
do we have any
I think
other?
it's helpful.
yes, as otherwise I think probably we're getting to the stage where our contributions are becoming more diffuse. Is anyone else got any points I want to raise, or there's always the bar afterwards? Anyway, so I think at this stage we really have to thank the organisation for the optimum design for mixed effects models, mixed effects, nonlinear and generalised linear models session. So thank you, Bastian and Susan.
And finally, there was a really informal proposal. There are many people staying here for a few days or at least a day. So maybe we can, go to a pub or have a dinner together, informal,